Hi there. This is a video tutorial about how to conduct a less biased literature review using academic search engines like PubMed or Google Scholar. I'll go ahead and be sharing currently what I do with Google Scholar. All right, so we're going to go ahead to my screen. And what you can see is this is Google Scholar. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll probably go ahead and use one of my own research articles, but you would go ahead and put in some keywords on the health issue or the topic that you think you'll be researching. So for me, I'll be doing Ebola survivors, health needs, long-term care. And just because I know I'll be using an article that I co-authored with some students, I'll go ahead and pull that up. And so what you can see is some of the articles that automatically generate and that populate. And so I'll go ahead and use this one. And what this is this was a publication on understanding ethical concerns about involving vulnerable human participant populations, which in my research, I have worked with Liberian Ebola survivors, and many of them volunteered for NIH funded or American funded partnership called Prevail, which, as part of providing treatment to survivors and doing medical research on their long-term health needs, they were also testing Ebola vaccinations using survivors' genetic profiles, their blood samples, and this was some research that we conducted on it. So as you'll know, I have uploaded a tool that I'm hoping that you can use for this assignment. And the main thing that I want you to do is to go ahead and just essentially fill it out. And so we'll go ahead and fill this out together. So first, you can go ahead and, type in the APA full citation, or you can just click on Cite and it will provide you the main types of ways that you can go ahead to generate an APA citation. And so what I do is I just copy and paste that there. But notice it doesn't provide you the DOI or any of that. And that's just important to remember for a little bit later. The type of source, and this is what we're currently learning. And the reason that I'll be having you do this is just so that you can get a little bit more familiar with a variety of sources that populate in your literature review search. And again, I want you to prioritize reading 10 articles of the first 15 to 20 that populate that are relevant within the last 10 to 15 years. Because honestly, in health science, everything is changing. And while there may be one or two research articles that are relevant generations later, we want to try to use the most relevant data sources possible. So with this, it says the type of source, and the type of source can either be a study, a literature review, a systematic review, meta-analysis, news articles, maybe an institutional report such as one by the CDC or the WHO, a policy memo, or a digital documentary. What we'll be using mostly from Google Scholar, of course, is going to be literature reviews, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, or actual original research. And this is what that was. So we'll go ahead and click on the article. And you can find what kind of article. It should say very quickly what it is. And this is a mixed method analysis, so that will be very important. But right here, it says it's a semi-structured survey. So this is data that is being collected from actual participants. So right away, we know that this is a research study and you need the abstract. You can go ahead and write your own summary of the paper, or you can just copy and paste the actual abstract, which is always in the beginning of any scientific study or any scientific resource. It's usually right there. And again, this was mixed method, and how you spell that's up to you. And then, of course, it said it was a semi-structured survey. Okay. And why this would be mixed method is because it's a semi-structured survey, as we will read through, especially as you read the abstract, you'll notice that the survey had quantitative questions, meaning a Likert score, where a person go ahead and rates 1 to 5, agree, disagree. But then there were also open-ended questions, meaning that the response was supposed to be elicited without actually kind of leading the person towards a specific answer. We wanted to hear from the participants from their own words. So again, those are not closed-ended responses. Those are open-ended responses, which are more qualitative in nature. And the population of interest was, of course, Ebola survivors. And you can go ahead and put Liberian adults. Okay. And the participation criteria, in order to find that, now you're actually going to have to start reading the piece. So if you read through the piece, you go through and you can see, it kind of goes into the rationale. It goes into the different hypotheses of the research, the theoretical framework, the ethical codes of conduct. And then it gets actually into the materials and the methods, or the methodology section. And this is where you're going to really get a lot of this meat. And so knowing during this, we were looking at survivors, okay? And here is the population, which you will eventually also need to be putting in. And I believe that is the sample size here. You can go ahead and put 19, or if you want to include the disaggregated information for more, detail, go ahead. And we find when we read this article that this used a snowball approach, meaning that the survey was launched over Facebook on different Ebola survivor websites or Facebook pages, and it was shared. Once it was launched by my research team, it was then shared by other survivors on the page who both filled it out and then shared it with survivors in Liberia. But in order to be a part of that study, to be considered, because you'll see 33 people did click on the survey, 25 people completed the survey in Qualtrics, but 6 participants were excluded. And why is that? That's because you have eligibility criteria. And so in order to understand what that is, you want to understand what were kind of the background needs for people to be able to be included into the study. And so when we look at this, let's see, the survey was an open-ended score. Here it is. The survey was both in English. See, it launches, sampling, snowball sampling. And here is the eligibility criteria, which included at the time that they had to speak English, have basic literacy, had to be a Liberian citizen, have documentation of being an Ebola survivor, and being between the ages of 18 to 65. And participation was anonymous. So these were the inclusion criterias. And exclusion meant that they didn't meet these criterias. And this was specified in that informed consent process, which we will learn more about. So again, you go to eligibility criteria, you go ahead and fill that out. We have the sample size, the type of analysis that is done. And in order to see that, then you're going to have to go to the results section. Usually you will have a results section first, and we can see that there was a qualitative analysis. And in order for that, there was a robust literature review was done, as well as qualitatively exploring the open-ended responses looking for trends in their statements. And so there was a codifying process that was used, and we can see that codifying process for key trends. And then if we go down, you can see that there is also a statistical analysis. And you can see from it right away, there is it looks like more advanced statistical research, it being a very limited survey of only 19 people. Not much statistical rigor can be done because typically you need at least 125 for an N to do OLS regression modeling, but there are ways around that. So it looks like definitely a correlation analysis. We can identify that with the R. There was some confidence intervaling mixed with some quotes. And the best way to go down is to see if there was any further statistical analysis. And here we go. We can see a correlation analysis, statistical bootstrapping, which is a technique that you can learn usually in statistics 2 and 3, which is for small sample sizes. And I won't go into too much detail on that, but these are different criteria and different types. And so we know that descriptive statistics were provided. So you can do, there was a statistical analysis, there was coding for theme. All right. And so really these were the main types of data analyses, and you don't need to go into too much detail, just trying to capture them. And then two, you want to go ahead and get the website, because oftentimes what happens is you need that website just so you can remember where that was located. And so you go in, put the website in. You can go ahead and copy the DOI, which is more typical, but this one is actually the PMC link, which can also be useful. And then you would be looking for statistics. So having read this, often you can find those main statistics right in the results section in the abstract. And here's one. Prevail participation satisfaction ranking is negatively correlated with receiving insufficient financial compensation, R equal to negative 0.51, indicating a negative relationship between those two variables, extensive time, and also poor treatment by clinical staff. And this was a major finding from the testimonies of the 19 survivors who filled the survey out. So I can go ahead and copy and paste. You can go ahead and put the page, but that's really up to you. What I'm asking for is at least one statistic. And if you want to put in 3, 4, go for it. But then go through and find quotes through the skimming. Again, I don't want you to waste time in reading these, word by word, but really just kind of skimming a lot of, just kind of the body of what's going on. And so, I could go ahead and read this, and here it is. You could say intern in 2014-16 outbreak, the offered medical research, the unique prospect of accessing Ebola virus disease survivors on a large scale. And Prevail initiated its first clinical trial in 2015. So maybe that's a quote that you think will be very useful. As for quotes, I am looking for at least 2 major quotes, and they should be quotes that you think you will use later in your actual literature review. And so if I was conducting research on biomedical research involving vulnerable populations, meaning people who need extra, safeguards, maybe because, they're affected by poverty or they're affected by, physical disabilities, or they need researchers to be more cautious and more aware of their needs. Often people who are pregnant, people from marginalized or vulnerable groups, inmates in prisons. There are a lot of different peoples that are protected under ethical research training protocols, which we will learn about in this class. But here is one in the past 50 years. Here's a quote that I find useful in the fact that in the majority world or low income countries, there tends to be ethical issues with ensuring the protection mechanisms for patients or for people who are being treated. So I'm going to go ahead and populate that quote there, and I'm done. So already I've got one assessed article, and in total you need at least 10. And it's really up to you how many more you do. And this is to get you a little bit more familiar with the different types of articles and types of research that are out there, which of course you'll be aware of several, but there's always ones that we don't know about. And why we'll be doing this method where you put in your key search terms, and then you'll be kind of selecting those articles that pop up. And again, if you can try to establish a range, I always say you want to have the minimum about 2015, that's about 10 years ago. And that will kind of eliminate any studies that have been cited a lot, because citation is an indication. It's one metric of knowing a study is useful, it was done well. But two, there are algorithms that Google Scholar, PubMed use to choose the most important articles they think will be good for you to consider when doing your research. And so here's one by Bates and Kamara. And so I would probably, if I was going to continue this path using these search terms, I would analyze, at least 10 of those first 15, 20 articles that pop up. And we can see a whole bunch. And you can go ahead and kind of purposefully select within here, because a lot of these were based on Sierra Leone. I want to try to, here's one on Guinea, so maybe I would want to try to diversify the ones I'm getting. But then two, here's a systematic review. And a systematic review tends to be a review that was already done of literature on this subject. And so they've probably already covered, and you can see in this one, the search identified nearly 2,000 articles, of which they had 24 that they included for an analysis. And that's really wonderful, especially if you're trying to understand the literature around a topic that you're learning about. Thank you.